Welcome back and thank you for staying with KTN Prime. We continue the conversation. Kevin Osido, Maliba Arnold and Dismas Mokua are still here with me. Dismas, perhaps picking up from where Maliba left it. I mean, when we talk about change, we have before, I'll give an example of last year. The youth said, you know what, fire these guys, replace them. Would it yield any fruit now? I mean, after what happened? These are the same people who said, you know, President William Ruto disbanded cabinet, then reappointed and reshuffled some of them. So this call to President William Ruto to, you know, remove these people, will it help this time round?
Well, in my view, firing anybody from the cabinet today or even public servants of rank would be addressing the symptom. And if you've got malaria and you take Panadol, I mean, you can take all the Panadols in the world, you'll never recover from malaria. The underlying issue really is about economics. Because majority of the people who are going to the streets are saying that these policy interventions you are coming, they're not aligned to our interests. For instance, these, whether it's monetary policies or fiscal policies, cumulatively, are they addressing the state of employment or unemployment? Are they addressing interest rates? Are they creating opportunities for the Kenyan youth? Or actually for the entire nation? Because Kenya is largely latent, and we need those policy interventions to make us kinetic. So today, and from the time we got independence, you remember what President Kenyatta said he was going to fight, the three things. We've been fighting them every single day, but we have not won. So even if it was another person who was president today, he would have the same challenges. So firing a few cabinet secretaries or even principal secretaries will not solve anything. You must address the underlying issue. And the underlying issue is that majority of people are saying that it's a crisis of representation. That most of the people who have been elected to offices do not actually serve the interests of the voters. Like, for instance, the county women rep for Nairobi, Esther Passaris. Would you actually say she's serving Nairobi interest when she wants to say that she wants to introduce some amendments so that we do not go to the streets to demonstrate? When the chair of that finance committee says that we are not going to accept your submissions because we are considering them spam, is he actually serving our interests? When you see some of these people, and this is an example you've given times above number, but it still makes sense. Therefore, say somebody who 1 year before an election would not afford a cup of tea in a five-star hotel, but 2 years later, they can afford to buy that five-star hotel. It means that within 2 years, the way President Kibaki would say, all of a sudden they become very clever, they know how to manage resources, and they can do these things. But how come the same is not translated in managing state resources? You know, these are the critical issues. So you can fire anybody and everybody, but if you do not cure the underlying issues, then there's also this issue of the public debt that is taking most of the resources. You can even talk about the pending bills, and one will wonder, why do you have pending bills? Are they in fact legal? So in my view, the solution is just embracing that thing we've been running away from, called meritocracy. Have democratic meritocracy in the public service, that you select the sharpest tools in the shade, straight from university. They go through the ranks, they end up as principal secretaries. Then those are the people who are going to run the show for you. In the political space, when you're electing folks, don't just elect somebody because they've come to your village in a chopper or they've come in an expensive suit. Look at their track record. What is their intellectual infrastructure? What is their talent infrastructure? Are they people that you can trust with funds at a funeral planning meeting or even at a wedding? You remember, you know that during weddings, there's somebody who's told to keep money. Now, this guy, you cannot trust him with that big khaki envelope for keeping cash, but you know you can make him an MP. How do you expect us to make progress? And you know, in America, they talk about kitchen table conversations. If you meet an average group of people, maybe at a salon or a kinyozi or at a bar or dinner, what are they actually talking about? Would you say they're happy with the current crop of these elected leaders? When they see them coming in, do they even respect them? And for those who've been around for a while, when President Moi walked into a room, people gave him respect. He had a magnetic impact. He may have had his challenges. When President Kibaki walked into a room, you would feel that a president has come in. Even during the national days, or when President Kibaki is giving a speech, you sit and you listen to every word. But do we have the same environment obtaining today? I mean, in the past when I was growing up, I'd committed to memory all the district commissioners, provincial commissioners, permanent secretaries, and ministers, because whatever they said was so heavy, it was as if it's gold. But right now, you can challenge anybody even to go to the streets today, ask them whether they know 10 members of the National Assembly, five senators, 5 principal secretaries, and 3 cabinet secretaries. They will not know because most of them have not come out to pronounce themselves on serious issues affecting the nation. And that is the challenge. And in my view, it's very easy for President Ruto to make progress. Just have structured engagement and manage expectations. People may be talking about 1 term, 2 terms, or even half term, but that's not really what they want. What they want is a leadership which addresses the core issue. You may say that the economy is doing very well.
Yeah.
Maybe sugar is doing very well, fertilizer is doing very well. But if you're telling somebody that we have come up with all these policy interventions, but they're struggling to place lunch on the table, they're struggling to place supper on the table. There's even a case ongoing around Shashif, somebody who's got a lipoma, then they've been told that it has to grow to a certain length before you can do an operation. Now, one doesn't know whether that is misinformation or disinformation. But it's just such kind of things that the ones which make people really begin to wonder. There was a very good example yesterday of a meeting, which in my view embraces a bit of meritocracy. When the Bungoma elected leaders sat for a meeting, and they were asking themselves, how do we take our leadership in Bungoma to the next level? And I understand they were convened by Tim Wanyonyi. Those are the kind of things we'd like to see, that people come up and they identify talent amongst themselves. And if within that room there's no sufficient talent, then they go get talent from outside so that we have cross-pollination of ideas. If we don't embrace meritocracy, democratic and undemocratic, I can bet my head that in 2027, we'll get a very poor quality leadership and it will keep on sliding. And you remember the warning that Dr. Fred Matiang'i gave some time ago, before the last election, that he had seen people who are presenting themselves for election who had a good record in wash crime. So those are the guys who went to the National Assembly and Senate. If we do not embrace that meritocracy, believe you me, in a short space of time, Burundi will have a superior economy to Kenya.
Okay, Osido, since he's talked about 1 term, 2 term, and the elections, just today we ran a story questioning whether the election will be run on schedule, because there are those that are saying, those allied to the government, saying that, you know what, because of the delayed boundary delimitation and the delaying of the reconstitution of IEBC due to that court case, that they will use this excuse to push or postpone the elections. Talk to us about that. Is it really possible?
Actually, the truth of the matter is that it is possible. That people...
Dismas is not agreeing with you.
No, he doesn't have to agree with me, because you asked me the question and I have a right to respond in terms of what I feel and what I think. If you look at the kind of trend that we have seen, not just with this government, but even with certain previous governments, particularly on areas of interest, the only avenues of salvation have been 2. One is the Kenyan people to push back. And the second one is the judiciary. A good example is the BBI, which was passed across all the 47 counties. Did we stop it? From the fingers of Kenyans, no, because you were told there was proper public participation, MCAs lobbied and mobilized and everyone, and they were even competing. And in fact, in this country, we had what was called Super Tuesday, a day when all the county assemblies passed the BBI bill, yeah? The only salvation was the courts, because some good lovers of the Constitution and those who were fed up with how things were working went and petitioned the process, and they were able to argue.
You're the one who just today said that, you know, the judiciary can equally be politicized. So can we really...
And hence why I said yes, that it is possible that the election date can be pushed. And I'm coming to that.
Okay.
That for the context where we are at right now, 2 things happen. One, the Constitution sets an election date, and it says on the 2nd Tuesday of August, the 5th year, which means that when that time comes, we expect that the electoral management body should be able to exercise all its powers by the Constitution and other relevant laws to guarantee Kenyans an accountable election. Verifiable, just, truthful, all those things. We see the politics that is going on with the IEBC, even as we are seated here. Remember that even the IEBC bill, which was assented to, the Amendment Act, came at the behest of the hands of Kenyans. So the only other salvation that Kenyans have is the hands of the people of Kenya. And that is the only push that will be able to get Kenya Kwanza government to turn either left or right. Because the judiciary, chances that it could be interfered with are high, depending on, again, where you stand. So there are those who are of the opinion that we are in government, we have to continue being here. So we will do all that is possible, that if we have chances to extend the term of office using excuses, so be it. We do everything that we think is possible with the judiciary to get our win. But Kenyans have proven that a government can be pushed. And a government can be pushed, and that government will bow from the apex at two levels. One, the finance bill of last year. Kenyans pushed for the government to listen to Kenyans. And the apex, the president, actually retracted the finance bill. At the second level, we saw a cabinet being disbanded based on demand for accountability, based on demand for serious governance mechanisms and practices. Mm-hmm. If that kind of push can be organized effectively, Ashley, there will be no room for the government to want to seek to extend its term. In the same manner that Gen Zs and Kenyans said, we want IEBC to be put in place, or you are saying there is no law. Sign that law before you come and talk to us on Twitter. And the president on X, and the president committed and said, first thing on Monday, and we saw it happening. So this political goodwill and the commitment that Kenyans expect from government to be able to do the right things, given our institutions of governance right now, those chances could be a little bit closed, despite the good brains that Mheshimiwa Mokua is talking about. But the politics, as much as my good friend and brother Maliba says, I'm being politically diplomatic, let me be for tonight, because the reality is that politics is at play. And it is moving every single inch of everything that is happening in this country. That governors have to go to State House, to beg to be listened to be given monies, is politics. Because the Constitution says county governments are independent. What are you going to do at State House? But politics, so they demands and says that for you to get your hundreds of billions to come to your counties, kujeni State House.
Okay.
So Kenyans must be alive to the kind of political machinations around IEBC. And given the kind of revolt and push, particularly that is being oiled by certain lack of basic things like accountability, that Kenyans are abducted and you cannot produce them.
Yeah.
Honestly, where are they? If these kind of things were happening in certain jurisdictions, presidents would have resigned. CSS or ministers in those kind of countries would have left office. But because in Kenya it is politically organized and politically arranged, Kenyans must also organize themselves, not to agonize over what is happening, but to organize to push back. Okay. And that push back, this thing called Ruto must go, and you are asking, go how? Kenyans will show you, and they will show you when you fail to listen to them. They will show you when you think they are stupid and that whatever they are doing, it does not make sense. And we have seen the youth of this country actually being able to organize. Look at what they did to the police. They said, sisi tunakuja tu na simu zetu, na maji,
water and a flag.
And a flag. And over time, as we continue, Sabasaba is coming up here, and we saw part of what happened in certain parts of the country in these last demonstrations, where police will stand and say, tuko na nyinyi. We are actually with you, because the same things that you are feeling, we are also feeling them. Kama ni shisha is not working for you, is also not working for us. until the president has to wake up and say, Police, I'm going to build for you houses. Is that what it will take to organize the country, for the government to deliver services, for the government to be amiable to the people, for the government to listen to the people? Because I agree with Mheshimiwa Maliba.
Okay.
Kenya Kwanza is not listening to Kenyans. The doors of dialogue are closed. So this bid to extend a term, and this is not new, by the way. We have seen even propaganda of proposals, to extend presidential term limits of governors. Those things will not stand. But they will only not stand if Kenyans are able to push back, organize, and organize effectively.
All right, you'd say the only language the government understands is protest. But Maliba, coming to you, I mean, do we draw similarities right now where we are at this point with what happened in the 90s? Do you think we're particularly at the same place, just different times and perhaps different asks from the people?
Well, there are clear parallels. On 7th July 1990, Kenyans got out. And of course, I think it was about 18 months after the 1988 Mlolongo charade, where people were told to queue, and some of those short lines were actually declared. So after that, that is when Kenyans actually realized that mediocrity has no end. People talk about getting to the rock bottom, and then you have nowhere else to go and you start coming back. They realize that when it comes to mediocrity, you can always go deeper. So on 7th July 1990, Kenyans come to the street. They were asking for democracy, or rather pushing for multi-party democracy at that particular point. Today, we have got people who are young then, in 1992, specifically YK92, and they still have got hangovers of the past. So they try to implement what they were doing then. So you wouldn't say that it could be a different generation that is actually now going to the street and fighting, but the people who actually are imposing the old days to us are people who then were young adults. They were, quote unquote, the Gen Zs of that particular time.
Yeah.
So we still see the same things. People are asking about, when you talk about public participation, when you talk about listening to the people, when you talk about having policy that is actually evidence-based, policies that speak to the needs, the realities, you simply are talking about governance, because this governance thing is about how you take care of the affairs of men. So it's not, it's the definition. Now, the tools might be different because we now have got the Constitution 2010. That makes it a little bit different. Technology as well. And of course, I said the generations that are around here. So you realize there is that. And probably just to go back and say that, number one, IEBC is not the 7 commissioners. It's not. The real IEBC is actually the secretariat and the management. And I can actually tell you that if how IEBC handled the elections in 2022 is anything to go by, they are competent and able. IEBC now has got sufficient capacity at management level to actually do work properly. Of course, the policy level up here, the legitimacy and some constitutional roles that can only be done by commissioners might actually be out there. But then just for conducting elections, IEBC is well able to actually take care of that. And by the way, it does not matter whether this IEBC will be brought in 6 months or a year before the election. As in, even if the president himself were to count votes, he will still lose. As in, even if he were to build a big temple at State House, and the votes will be counted there. We move from Bomas and we go to that new church he's building in State House, and we count them in that particular church. Yeah. He will still lose. So it does not matter really, but there's no worry about who counts these votes. There's no worry. The people who actually are incidentally pushing that narrative, you realize, are actually people in government, the most scurious of this world. The people in that particular administration who want the guys in admin, or rather the people chosen to get in. Already, as a people, we said we have no confidence in the commissioners that were brought in. But we have got confidence in the Constitution of Kenya, that we know at the end of the day, they will be accountable to that green book that Osido has there. So we really do not care whom they brought in. After all, they brought in their friends, they brought in their relatives, they brought in people with deep state connections. And we were here, we spoke about that. And we said we really don't care about those commissioners. It's a requirement of the Constitution. What we know is that the only place we hold confidence in is there. Okay. And then finally, when you speak about how we move forward, and probably anybody having the idea that you can actually try and extend the term, you really just want to ban this country. I saw the other day the DCI, the director himself, talking about that the state must maintain the monopoly of violence. You know, we need to remind the police, and including the people who are now in government, because sometimes they get to forget this, that policing is only possible in this country because of the goodwill of the people that you are policing. Once the people withdraw that goodwill, and I'm calling that legitimate goodwill, once people withdraw, there wouldn't be anything. With 1,209 police stations, that is one police station for about 40,000 people. Even if you were to use the Murkomen wisdom, and that I call it the wisdom of boys, that you, and you know he's demonstrating on how you use a gun, and talking about you can take 10, 20. I want to see which police station in this country has got the capacity to take down 40,000 people, for example. So even the police should know, even when you talk about the monopoly of violence, they should know that it is the people's violence that they actually delegate to you. You have got legitimate, let me call it legitimate monopoly to violence. It is the people's violence. Once the people withdraw that legitimacy, look at Homa Bay today. You call in backup from Kendu Bay, and you see the sea of people, you can't do anything. So the earlier William Ruto actually smells coffee and realizes that he just needs to do the right thing. Like, for example, they are stuck with this thing, the plan. If the plan was working, people would not be in the streets. They are so adamant. This plan thing, and that's what I'm telling you, that this administration thinks that propaganda is actually strategy.
Maliba, what happened? Because you know you and I have shared platforms where you are a very strong supporter of this plan.
So
what happened?
If Ashley asks, I will respond.
What happened, Maliba?
So I will respond after my point.
Okay,
I'm simply putting forward this.
Okay.
That, look at this, 7.2 million people, I think roughly 7.2 million Kenyans, a good number of them, much more brilliant than this panel, voted for William Ruto. A number of those people have said no. As in, who am I to actually stick at a place? If 7.2 million people who voted for William Ruto changed their mind, why would some of us stick there? Sometimes we are not clever than people. People give us these responsibilities, not because we are clever, but because they think our hands are safe to handle these things. But if it were just them dealing with these things, they would take care of that. Anyway, the long and short of this is this, that we shouldn't really overemphasize and overplay this idea of IEBC elections being late. Because the one thing I have got confidence in is two things, by the way. I have got confidence in the Constitution of Kenya. It has got a way of fighting back when it's raided. And I have got confidence in Gen Zs, because they will not do the sins of my generation, the millennials, of being kept in boardrooms, speaking good English, talking all policy and everything else, and nothing come out of it. Osido will remember here that when some of us started doing policy work 15 years ago, the word youth bulge was already in the policy documents. I first met the word youth bulge 15 years ago, and the prediction was so up to it. They said, in the mid-20s, Kenya will have a youth bulge, and among the issues we were expecting were massive unemployment, you see it, massive unrest, you see it. Go back to 2010, 2011, and you will see it. Not even in Vision 2030. The precursor to Vision 2030 was the economic recovery and strategy paper, something like that. It is down there. And 15 years ago, we spoke about the youth bulge. We spoke about the country burning the way we see it. It looks like a prophecy of a Jewish prophet. But what did we do? We failed through that because we were busy speaking good English, talking policy so that people see we can actually talk policy and we understand, and nothing was done.
Okay.
Actually, let's go ahead with good English.
Sure. We only have like 3 minutes, so one and a half each.
I've got it in points form. Number one, failure to have elections in 2027 is a threat to our national stability. If we don't have elections in 2027, then we may as well say bye to a country called Kenya. So anybody entertaining that idea must know that that is going to be a crisis which will not be reversible. Number two, we must embrace meritocracy everywhere, not just in the public sector. Like, for instance, today, something good has happened at Nairobi Hospital. Professor Manyora has taken over as the chairman. So we hope, because he's a meritocratic man, he will go the extra mile.
Keyword hope.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I say that hope is not a strategy, but we really hope that it's going to go to the next level, because you see Nairobi Hospital has been a revolving door. Conflicts at the boardroom, at the CEO's office. So hoping that, Professor Manyora should give it stability. Number 3, the economy has to work for all Kenyans. Right now, the economy is working for the ruling elites and the powerful elites. If the economy is not working for all Kenyans, then again, it's going to be a crisis. So for you to be able to take us to the next level, the economy has to work. And then finally, there are some people who are criticizing envoys, accredited to Kenya, that they were talking about Kenya. They forget that we're operating in the context of globalization. Whatever happens in Kenya affects stuff in Iran, in Italy, everywhere. So when they talk, we must listen. And that is why it's commendable that the Honorable Musalia Mudavadi gave a special diplomatic briefing, giving context and clarity to what is happening. And finally, we can complain about everything till the cows come home. But if we do not move from those complaints and then we come up with solutions anchored in this thing which is going to become a broken record, that all the leaders we elect under the meritocratic framework, they must have character, capacity, and competence. Part of the challenge we have today in Kenya is lack of character in most of our elected leaders.
Okay.
That when they are stealing, they don't feel guilty. When they're coming up with policy pronouncements which are vendor-driven, they don't feel guilty. So if you don't have those people with character, then again, we are going to be in a horrible space.
Okay, I'll let you have the last word. By the way, the ambassadors and leaders were actually blamed for inciting the protests. Religious leaders, together with the ambassadors, if I'm not wrong, by the government. The
ambassadors were just taking note and giving you an helicopter view that from where we are seated, we have noticed a few things which are not consistent with good governance. And the Prime Cabinet Secretary gave a response which offered clarity and context. Now, if your neighbor, in the village, you live in a grass-thatched house, yes. Your neighbor sees smoke, they must come and alert you. They tell you there's fire in your house.
Okay. Asido, last.
Kenya Kwanza must get its act right. At least get one thing, just one thing working for Kenyans. Whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, whether it's agriculture, whether it's jobs for the youth. It's flabbergasting that it is a Wednesday or a Tuesday, 11 o'clock, and see the thousands of young people in our streets. At least get one thing working. Number 2, national values and accountability, Article 10, Chapter 6. Can we rethink about what that would mean to a very strong and stable Kenya? Accountability. Be accountable. Your Excellency, the President, be available. Be available the way you were available during your campaigns. I remember those town hall meetings. I crafted about 6 of those documents that were submitted for both Azimio and also Kenya Kwanza. And you could see the engagement, people asking questions, and the president is there, of course, as a candidate then, and he's engaging with the people. Where did that spirit go to? Last but not least is that Kenya is ranked so high up in the global sphere. We cannot afford to let down this country. Whatever you do it to the glory of God and for the unity of the good people of Kenya.
All right, Maliva, just to be fair.
For me, I think we sit at a place, I'll just respond to what he said very quickly when he spoke about the ambassadors and whatever they are blaming. In this administration, they are blaming everybody except themselves. They are blaming everything except their plans and their actions. He should just have said that a poor workman quarrels with his tools or blames his tools. So today, literally, you're going to blame everything. We are going to talk about terrorism. We are going to talk about Ford Foundation. We are going to talk about the diplomats. We will talk about everything else. Yet, we have ruined our economy. We have actually ruined our foreign policy. Kenyans who are out there now are threatened courtesy of the decisions that are done locally. We literally are not getting anything correct. We are, we can blame everything. The administration of the day will blame everything. But not the, like, for example, I've told you, what has stopped them, and Osido is in a better position to talk about this. What has stopped this administration from doing a midterm review?
Yeah.
It's actually in law, it is expected, there's a reason why that window is actually provided, but they're all over, the plan, because of one simple reason.
Okay.
One simple reason, actually. You know why? When you hear the policy talk from Kenya Kwanza and President William Ruto, it speaks like it knows where it's going. But you shouldn't be looking at that. You look at the business model underlying it. So literally every policy proposal that is actually said, when they come out and they're actually very fluent, very elaborate, it's not that word, that is the pitch. The real business is is actually elsewhere. Otherwise, we will not be stuck here. So I'm actually happy that the country has actually woken up to reality and that we are making progress because of one thing. Whereas we don't know who will be president in 2027. All of us know who will not be.
Okay, that's a really good place to end this conversation. Thank you, gentlemen. Maliba Arnold, Party Leader, Progress Plus Alliance, Dismas Mokwa, Political Risk Analyst, and Kevin Osido, Executive Director, County Governance Watch. Well, that's how we wrap things up. On KTN Prime, I'm Ashley Mazuri. On behalf of Jesse Rogers and Marisha Witi, good night.